So for a few months now, I've been mulling over an idea I've had for how I can try to show a little bit of a behind the curtain sneak peek at how I've processed images that I'm releasing without going into a full-blown tutorial. I did this back in 2020 for a webinar presentation I gave, but it was 45-50 minutes long, covering 2 images, which is far deeper and more in depth than what I'm hoping to do here. So I wanted to find a way to kind of whittle it down and really focus on just the building blocks of the foundational concepts of how I'm approaching my processing in the digital darkroom, so that you can see kind of how I'm thinking through things to realize the vision I had when I was taking the image out in the field. Now, my goal here with this Making the Image series is to keep the videos less than 10 minutes long, which if you followed along as I've released other videos, you might realize is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me at times, because I can kind of go on and on a little bit as I try to really delve into the details. But again, that's what I'm trying to avoid here, is just focus on the concepts and not all the little nitty-gritty details. And my hope here is that this Making the Image series will be just on those foundational concepts, so that you can apply this whether you're using Lightroom Classic like me, or Photoshop, or Luminar, or whatever software program you're using to do your processing. You can take what I'm showing you here and apply it to your own processing approach to help you realize your vision as well. So anyways, in line with keeping this short and sweet, let's just jump into this. If you do enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you've got ideas for how I can tweak it or improve it as I continue to roll these out over time, please do leave a comment below as well. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when I release new videos going forward. And with that, let's jump right in here. So here I've got the raw image file, and let me open this up in a snip here so I can show you exactly what I'm hoping to achieve. So obviously when I was in the field, the shape of this tree is what really caught my attention. And I want to be sure to emphasize that through my processing, since that is the main star of the show here. So really pulling out these details of the main tree structure. This was something that I saw from quite a distance away. This was actually shot at 366 millimeters, so this was quite a bit in the distance. And this tree structure was so unique and bold that it did stand out quite a bit, but it's lost a little bit in the flat raw file here. And also because I shot it at such a long focal length, this was a pretty foggy and misty morning, so the tree kind of blends in with this chaotic background quite a bit. In addition to pulling out the structure of the tree, I also want to eliminate some of the unnecessary parts of this image. So typically when I'm shooting in a portrait orientation like this, I'm going to shoot in a 4x5. So the goal here would be kind of knock out this top part, especially these branches coming in from the right-hand side here that are a little bit of a distraction. And then although I do like some of the evergreen foliage down here, as I feel it kind of helps ground or base the image, I don't need all of it. So the other part of the crop will fall about here, and I'll cut this out to eliminate that. So that's really, again, making this main tree structure the primary focal point of the entire frame. Now, the other thing we can do here is looking at shaping the light. Again, this really falls into the background quite a bit here on this flat raw file, so I can also look at darkening areas, brightening areas, doing all of the typical things you would do with your processing, again, to emphasize that main focal point of the image. So now coming back over to Lightroom, if I jump over to kind of my starting point here, the first thing I did was I went ahead and applied the 4x5 crop. So if we compare this to the raw image that was shot 2x3, you can see this entire upper top portion has been eliminated, and I've trimmed down that bottom portion as I showed when I was drawing on the screen a moment ago. So that really emphasizes this tree as the main central focal point of the image. Now what else I've done here is I've applied my basic kind of prepping the canvas analogy I've used in other videos. So I've brought the exposure up quite a bit and tweaked and adjusted luminance from a general standpoint. Now this process is also something that will continue to get tweaked as I work on an image. So these aren't necessarily the settings I used right from the get-go, but as I continue to work and process the image, I come back and revisit these and so on and so forth. But applied some color grading to this through the profile selection, did usual white balance settings, and then again, just prepping the canvas from getting my exposure to where I want it and things of that nature. From there, I really started dialing in the color management piece of things. So first things I did there would be coming into my calibration panel. I've currently got this disabled. So as I turn this on, if you watch the rusty oranges in the leaves and the green foliage in these evergreens, it's a subtle change with calibration, but I did some adjustments here to draw those colors out a little bit and add some vibrancy to those. So again, if I turn this on and off, it starts bringing some dimensionality in just by boosting those colors. And then also going into my HSL adjustments, or hue, saturation, and luminance. And as I turn this on and off, you'll see a bigger difference. So on, off, on, off. And really what I'm doing here is trying to minimize the amount of purples and blues in this background here, as well as get these greens and the evergreens under control a little bit. Some of these are bordering on almost a neon green look, and it's just not quite in balance with the image as a whole. And again, if I'm wanting to emphasize this tree, everything still kind of is just blending together as one piece right now. So if I turn these on, I've made adjustments to my hue, I've made adjustments to the saturation, boosting the oranges a little bit, pulling down those greens, pulling down the blues as they were getting a little overwhelming. And then same thing with the luminance sliders. I actually lightened the greens up a little bit while darkening the blues, since those typically are in more shadowed areas, pulling those into the background a little bit more by darkening those up. And the last piece of color management for the most part on this image was my color grading. If I turn this on, you'll see a significant difference here. So coming in here now, turning this on and off, you can see really boosting the general vibrancy, as well as kind of changing the color tone of the image as a whole. By tweaking the shadows and midtones, I turned those or shifted those more towards the blue end of things. And then on the highlights, I added in some orange to warm them up and again, give it a little extra boost to those rusty leaves that are surrounding the tree in the background here. Now, where the biggest impact came in on this image was actually on my tone curve adjustments. And this is where I really started to add the contrast back in. And, I kind of think of it like carving a piece of wood. This is where I'm really starting to carve in the adjustments to hone into the vision that I have for this image. So if I turn this one on, it's going to be a blatantly obvious difference. So turning my tone curve on, suddenly now you've got a lot more contrast in there, and this main tree here starts standing out quite a bit more than what it does on that raw image. And this was just bringing down my darks quite a bit, my midtones quite a bit, and then adding just a subtle boost to the highlights here as well. And from here, the only other thing I really did that made a significant impact on this image was I used some radial filters, again, to help shape the light, so to speak, darken some areas to, again, bring that tree more into the central focus point of the image. So if I go into my radial adjustments and turn those on, so on and off, on and off, and you can see I primarily focused on darkening this lower left corner down here. I darkened this little section within the nook of this branch to create some separation from that background and the structure of the tree. And then I added a vignette as well with a very large radial adjustment. If I actually zoom out here, you can see just how large it is. But using that to just darken just a little bit the outer edges of the frame while centering this adjustment more on the tree, again, to help draw the eye into that as the main focal point. And then from there, that's really the bulk of it. I did apply a global vignette just to help draw the eye into the center of the frame a little bit as well. But it is a fairly subtle effect, so no vignette and vignette turned on. But if we compare the before and after here, again, very flat, very dull, actually a little bit underexposed, although I was trying to be careful of clipping any highlights and some of the brighter points of the leaves. But again, this tree, even though it still stands out, it is far from being a strong focal point of the image. So by applying the crop and doing my color adjustments, and then especially with those tone curve adjustments to control the differences between my darks and brights, now the tree is very clearly the main focus of the image and really stands out from its surroundings. And then I also boosted the rusty oranges a fair bit because I thought that added some nice contrast of color, as well as kind of framing the tree itself too. So that's the ins and outs of it. So again, I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you got ideas, comments, feedback, please drop those in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, until next time, take care.